All right, what's going on, Nick? I mean, we met on LinkedIn. And we've been following each other, and obviously we're in the same industry. So I'm happy to have you on.
Thank you.
I know Sarah just went with you, so I'll try to not ask the same questions. But
No, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some questions that are kind of like, let's amplify on that a little
yeah,
bit more.
yeah. So give it a brief. Just your what's your ideal client, and what are you typically doing? What's your day to day? What's your
Yeah. My day to day is outside of meeting up with the guys in the morning time, kind of doing a little crunch time, making sure that everything that they're going to be bringing to the job sites are discussed and, all the thoughts are processed and all the doubts are kicked out the door
Mhm.
and we're moving along. Outside of that, I jump in my truck and I hit the road. That is my office. We
Mhm.
took our trucks and made them all Wi-Fi compatible and kicked all of them out and said no more offices for you.
Nice.
And that's what you actually see is on LinkedIn is that whole new electric showroom. Is we all took all of our offices, the outside sales folks, four of us, and we sacrificed it and opened up that whole entire showroom. But yeah, so now we're out on the road. I
Yep.
go down my territory, where I say is kind of down in that Fairfield County.
Mhm.
So yeah, hit the traffic right before it gets super heavy. Spend my time down there doing a lot of sightseeing, either again pre-installation, post-installation, because there's a lot of involvement with just doing a fireplace.
Right.
It's not just putting it in there and saying see you later tile guy, figure it out, see you later floor guy, hopefully you don't burn up your floor, or,
Mhm.
and set these guys up for failure, should I say. So there's a lot involved with myself going down there before the installation, making sure that the framing is done correctly, making sure that my guys who aren't driving from Southington all the way down to that Fairfield County aren't going to get down there and the house is not insulated for some reason.
Right.
Because there again, I can't do these jobs, or should I say, I can do my job, but it now just pissing off the next person in line, the insulator, the
Mhm.
sheetrock guy, or somebody who was supposed to be done before and now I'm there before them. So for me, I'm out on the road, kind of looking at the jobs, just making sure it's done, and of course, selling product too. Whenever I
Yeah.
see a new job site, I stop off there and
Do you think primarily most of your business is coming from new construction?
for myself, yeah. I mean, I oversee is the new construction part of it. I'm the
Yep.
builder sales manager outside of being the hearth
Yep.
design expert. But for myself, I oversee that aspect, which is all new construction and remodeling and so forth. So if you're putting a fireplace and you're putting new timber on there, typically I get involved with that just
Mhm.
because it's a little bit more involved. It's not just putting a stove on a hearth or putting a liner in a chimney and running up there and just measuring up to the mantle. There's now the designers involved with it. There's a framer involved with it. There's an electrician. There's a plumber. There's other trades that are involved with this that I can't just say, all right, here's a insert and let them figure it out how they're going to pipe it. Let them figure it out where the 110 is supposed to come in. I don't know. How are you supposed to operate it? I don't know. The electrician is supposed to know that. He's the electrician. So for all these things that we're doing, especially in the new construction business, is we're looking to make sure all these things are in place. Because at the end, when I go turn on the remote control, especially because mind you, I'm the last guy out of there,
Mhm.
not only the first guy, but the last guy out because my technicians do the setup and startup. But if that unit doesn't run when I hit that remote control because the power wasn't connected or somebody didn't do their last step to the job, well, that's my fault,
Mhm.
right?
And I don't think people realize the every single time there's a different trade that comes in, there's an opportunity for them to mess it up or not have the
100%.
right information, or they send you told the right information to the right guy, but then he sent his helper to go
Yep.
finish it. So,
Yes.
you know, we, as project managers, I mean, we're coming in, you're doing the same thing. It's like we have to double check all of our measurements, make
Hmm.
sure that the framer started
Yep.
framing it right. Um, and then come back and make sure that the drywall guy didn't do something to mess it up.
Yeah. And there's always midterm is that once the designer makes their design, keep them off the site too because
Mhm.
they're making minor little changes. And then at the end, I'm like, whoa, why did you do that? We
Yeah.
didn't discuss
Yeah.
that.
And,
And
and
it
and that doesn't work. It
it
doesn't work.
it
It's not gonna
doesn't.
we can't
Yeah.
build that.
Yeah.
It's good in your head,
Yeah,
but we can't build it.
correct. So there's a lot of things that we don't want to do is wait to the last minute,
Yeah.
get to that last moment
Yeah.
because again, with all these stages, especially when you're involving new construction, there's a lot of costs
Mhm.
to get somebody to go back
Right.
after they're gone.
Right.
While they're there, well, okay, I'm here. I'll fix it up. I'll cut this out real quick. But after the trade is
Right.
gone, to get them to come back to go redo a tile or reframe a wall just because it's not done correctly, now it's kind of fighting against the every other trade who is now lined up.
Right.
The spray foam guy who was supposed to be here next week. Well, he can't do his job now because you didn't do your part, or the insulation or the sheetrock guy. So there's so many things to us that we got to keep our ball of wax, nice and round and moving along, and nobody's kind of getting caught up on their end.
Right. Yeah, and especially now with spray foam, we're seeing a lot more spray foam. When you've got your gas line in, you've got your electrical whip in there, and then they go to spray foam, and that stuff's in the wrong place.
Oh
It's
God.
kind of a pain in the neck to
It
move
is.
it.
It is. And that's why when I deal with a lot of folks is I really go back to the design aspect of it. I don't go yet. Should I say when I first started this, I was always going to the project manager. What are we doing? What are we doing? But the project manager was always the guy who was making it happen. He has plans. He was following a plan and kind of getting it done. So we brought it back to the design aspect. So, all right, we saw all the failure happening at the time of here. So we started working with the design. What are you doing? What are you looking at? What are we putting around this, right? What is this visual that you decided to sell the client when you built this house, when you designed this whole thing, right? Because now that falls on me as the fireplace guy. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it does at the end, because when they go turn on this fireplace, or when they're visually walking to this aspect, it has to look like that drawing, or at least very, very close to it, that's going to be happy with it.
Yeah. When the client walks in to do the walkthrough and says, I don't remember us picking it.
Yeah,
making
what do
it
you
look
mean
like
the
this."
fireplace,
Yeah.
is 40 inches off of the ground?
Right.
Who made that decision?
Right.
So there's a lot of layering to it. There's a lot of checks and balances to it. Especially now that we're getting to more of these modern style fireplaces versus traditional, which sit on the ground, right? But now we're dealing with these modern fireplaces that are elevated in the air, that deliver quite a bit of heat out of it. And then we're very minimalistic. So there's no shelves for deflection. There's nothing around that to create this heat. So now we got to think about, how are we going to heat manage this? We got to find passive heat ways to get this heat away from it so that we can do that. So it's a lot of design and reverse engineering. It's not just slapping a fireplace in a wall and 2x4 framing, 42 by 42. Great, let's go. There's a little bit more involved with that now.
It is interesting, and you are right. It is kind of cool that these elevated, in kind of centered in the wall.
Yep.
And is that typically gas?
It is. Yeah, most of that what you're going to see is a gas, and which is huge right now, is electric. You're going to start seeing a lot with the electric fireplaces doing that. But right now, what really kind of set that mode is the gas fireplaces, because again, it's that clean look. It's that minimalistic look. It is that ribbon style flame without a raging fire. Remember, traditional fireplaces, that's what you expect. You expect a raging fire, right? It's like going to a fire pit. Why do I go to a fire pit if I'm not going to have a raging fire? It's boring. So on traditional fireplaces, and again, when we're pulling this out of the client, what you want this to look like? What's your expectations? What's your visual? Oh, I want a rip-roaring flame. All right, well, we know it's not going to be a modern fireplace, because you're going to get a very small ribbon-style fire, and it's going to kind of stretch across, and it's going to dance a little bit, but it's not going to be jumping. It's not going to be flickering and flying around as you would see in a traditional style. So all these things are going to matter to the client, especially when they go hit that remote control. So again, pulling it all the way back to what are you wanting, what your expectations are as the client, and then looking at the designer and saying, hey, Miss Designer, this is what the homeowner says, what they want. You have this around here. We got to find this midway, and then take that to now project manager to make it happen.
Now, is there like, do you see is there a big cost difference, like between your entry and your higher end to that? Because I typically, when we're dealing with stuff like this, it's like people have this budget, and they really don't want that, the actual what they get.
Yep.
Do you really have to pay a good amount to get the rip roaring? Because I know we wouldn't have.
No, not at all. So it goes back to, again, what your expectations are. When I say expectations, is what you like as a fire, as a person, because again, my fire is totally different from what your fire may be. So when I say coming to our showroom is very important to me, because I can tell you all the wonderful things about this, but I'm never going to sit there and point out all the most terrible things, because I might not think it's terrible. Right? Where you might walk in and go, ew, that's terrible. You thought that was real? But that's your expectation. So all in all, I got to make sure that you come in, at least see it, get a visual of it, or if not, tell me what you saw that's very likable, and then I can build off of that. So
it's interesting, because we do a lot of remodeling, and people are kitchens and bathrooms. They're like,
Hmm.
oh, just the standard kitchen. I'm like, what does that mean?
What does it mean
I did a
nowadays?
black kitchen
Yeah.
one day, a white one the other day.
One had a blue
Yeah,
island with white. What is
exactly,
standard
exactly.
nowadays?
And
Exactly.
one person spent 150, the other person spent 55, and
Yep.
they all liked it.
Yep.
So it's interesting. But I think we have an older one at our house. I don't think we've turned it on in a couple of years because I think it was a builder grade. They kind of threw it in there so that it could say we had a gas
Yep.
fireplace. Um, but it was on the range of just looking too fake.
Yep.
But I think have they come along? Have they gotten a lot better in that way?
Yeah. So, just to kind of give you a little one step back from the fireplace to kind of give them a little credibility. Gas pressures on your fireplace are very important.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a right gas pressure, even when working with the minimum, you're already cutting yourself short on the type of flame or expectations you're going to get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So even when we're doing our showrooms, we're making sure we have right gas pressures. It's like testing anything. You want to make sure your environment is giving you or delivering you what you're supposed to. Okay. So yes, to answer the question, the fireplaces have come a long way with, efficiencies, because more efficient creates more flame, a little bit more BTUs creates more, apparent into it. And again, you're not paying much more for that. So like for us, we have a lot of builders we work with, blessed to say that, with subdivisions. Subdivisions are kind of like your cookie cutter situations.
Mm-hmm.
They offer an allowance, they offer your standard fireplace, maybe two selections of finish and a couple mantles, right? At that point, that's a great fine line budget. The fireplaces are producing a very realistic flame. Now, again, for somebody who walks in who goes, well, I've been in fireplaces my entire life and I've had wood stoves, and well, then when you show them something like this, they're going to obviously have higher expectations.
Right.
Well, you got somebody who had never had a fireplace in their life or had one in their home, and now they're coming one to a brand new home with a brand new fireplace. Well, anything bigger than a Bic lighter to them is going to be, that's a fireplace.
Right.
So yeah, so we don't want to obviously give them the lowest grade, and that's what I don't do. And my line is I don't do a good, better, best. Our line of competition is when we bring in manufacturers, who's a competition against each other? Who can we actually know that if I was on the market or I was out in the field, who would bring up and say, what about this manufacturer?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if that's going to be a competition to me, I'm going to bring that in because I'd rather have that to give you option versus going, well, let's just go back in price and take things away that are important to you just because you can't afford it right now. Well, no, we're going to find ways to kind of bob and weave a little bit, find that unit, find that price point that's important. Because again, to a lot of folks doing a design, a fireplace, it's not like a kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not invested as much in your kitchen as you do your fireplace, but look at where you spend a lot of your time when you're not in your kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
You're in front of your fireplace. So why wouldn't you spend that time and that investment into putting that with your fireplace, that finish, that look? And you know what? When it's off, when the fireplace is off, it also has to look good too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, great. It looks great when it's running, but when it's off, it has to look good as well.
No, I love it. It really, I don't think, part of this podcast is kind of, getting out this information to people so that they understand all of the nuances that go into every step of every part of your home.
Absolutely.
HGTV is out there, like 17, 18 minutes later, they've done everything and it's done, right? But even the thought of maybe having that professional, with the design that is making sure there's enough gas coming to your, because you can have multiple appliances come, that are using gas. And if somebody hasn't made that calculation to get the right, piping over to it,
Yep.
it's not going to look good.
Oh, it's done at
Right.
that point.
Right.
Absolutely.
And those are, those are the little nuances where people are like, they're on Facebook saying, "Give me a reasonable contractor," and that's what happens when you get a reasonable.
Yep.
The outcome doesn't work because they didn't know that they had to do a calculation of how much gas do you need. Obviously, there's building inspectors and stuff that help, but those same people aren't pulling permits.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. And then again, I mean, for myself, I align myself with clients that are aligning themselves with success.
Right.
I've been growth, and I've been with working with clients that, a one and done for me isn't going to pay the bills. A one and done is going to set somebody up, and it may end up being just pure bad reputation.
Yeah.
So I've walked away from jobs. I walked away from clients who aren't aligned with what our our success story is, and that's to move forward, to build better homes, to give quality product out there without sacrificing the quality of work that we're producing. And that's why even with our technicians and our installers, it's not that they're just going out slapping wood in the wall. They're being inspected. We're following behind them and going, no, 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 no. This is a quality that we sold our clients. We told them that this is what their expectations are, not only visually, but behind that wall. Because mind you, what they don't see behind the wall is behind the wall.
Right.
But behind that wall in 20 years, and I always say, you know how many fireplaces that I've taken out in 20 years, or 28 years, that I've looked at and I go, wow, I remember installing this fireplace, right? But here I am taking this out, looking at my work 20 years later. Now, if somebody's re-looking at my work 20 years later, I don't want them to go, what the hell were they thinking when they put this in? So there's a lot of things that I say, you have to run and make sure that it's done correctly the first time. Know that you can go rest your head at night and sleep. Know that every person that's turning on their fire in their house deliberately is going to enjoy it and not have to run out in the middle of the night. And I get to sleep at night knowing that my technicians did their job. They're educated. They made sure as they're doing their gas pressures that if it's not right, they're going to tag it, bag it, and make sure that the builder knows or the homeowner knows that this isn't running per manufacturer specs. Because at the end of the day, Connecticut is a liability state. No matter what you are, I could be just walking by your job site and I said hi for some reason, and I'm pulled into the liability of it. So, you know, we take that challenge very, very much so seriously because again, it's a life that we're putting in there. And again, one guy kept saying, digging in, he goes, Nick, we're putting a fire in people's houses on purpose.
Yeah.
Why would they trust it with anyone else? Why would they have, you know, the roof guy go out here just because he was free to go slap in a fireplace to save him $600 on an install? Why have your insulators, and again, no offense to them, but why have your insulators throw in a fireplace? Well, you're right. I mean, they don't know the codes. They don't know what's happening after the fact because they're not there to see it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that we worry about on our end that, again, that we take credibility for and ownership for because, again, 27 years later doing this, you can only imagine where my nervousness comes happening is, you know, did we do it right 20 something years ago? Mind you, when we were smoking on planes and in hospitals when codes were a lot different. Yeah, we want to make sure even then we did it right.
No, and we see it, you know, because we're in a little bit different market. You're doing a lot of new construction. We do a lot of remodels.
Oh,
So
you
we
see a lot.
see like the handy homeowner in there fiddling around.
Oh, God.
And just you're like,
Yeah.
they're just lucky they haven't burnt the place down. But do you see? I mean, obviously, new homes are so tight right now. The efficiencies in heating systems are you know great now. Are people putting, you know, the typical these in for heat, or is it really more for aesthetics?
Right now, I mean, it is for more aesthetics.
Yeah.
When they walk through the door, they're like, well, you know, if it gives me a little heat, that's wonderful. Here's the thing. I mean, we're building houses that are very tight, right? So I can walk around with a candle and almost heat up a room now. It's so efficient. So I'm putting in 25,000 BTUs into a house at 65% efficiency. That's going to heat up that room very quickly, right? But again, what you expect for heat and what I expect for heat, my house, if you walk into my house, it's comfortably balmy 78 degrees.
Right.
I
It's
like
more.
it hot, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so it depends on each person. So
Right. That's interesting though. And now is it at me? Is the design of it? But if people want that roaring fire, but they don't want, I would think you would almost have to have the heat to get that roaring look, or is it just basic how they've designed it?
Well, now that's the expectation part of it. So, like for that, I would say let's just go with a gas log set
Right.
because a gas log set isn't for heat. It's going to produce heat because anything that's going to run around that, or should I say, heat up, is going to produce a small radiant amount of heat around the fireplace. But in this case, it's not for the heat source, you know. But if you are a heat source, then it's an insert, and now it's got blowers. It's got a pyroceramic glass that's letting the UV heat penetrate through it and get additional heat off of that. So there's kind of that wants and needs, and you filter that out, kind of pulling it through.
And that, you know, being a consultant like you are is key for the client, because I know, you know, sometimes you want the ambience, but then it's too hot in that room. So, and you know, you're opening up the window.
Yep. Well, I've seen that where we've actually, you know, again, on the retail part of it, it's again asking the question, because I've got a lot of folks who walk through the door and they're like, I want the biggest and baddest stove. I want this thing to put 4-foot logs in there. I want to burn a 30-foot oak in a day. And I'm like, well, how big is your house? 900 square feet. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, geez.
Yeah. You're gonna be heating the
Yeah,
neighborhood with
yeah,
that.
yeah. You'll never get that thing hot enough to burn efficient.
Right.
And that's a key thing about a wood stove is you have to burn these at least 350, 400 degrees surface temperatures in order for the internal mechanisms to actually to make it happen and burn efficient and clean. If not, then you're totally reversing everything. You're burning dirty. You're not burning efficient. And at this point, what are you doing besides just burning a chunk of wood? Go get a fire pit, put it in the backyard, and now let's put a gas stove there, still burn it clean and have a stove look.
That is really interesting to think in that way, because also doesn't that when you're not burning hot enough, you creating like creosote and all that
Absolutely,
stuff in the chimney?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of folks don't really look at it that way. They're gonna go, oh, you know what? It's 45 degrees outside. Let me just throw a log inside there, right? That one log is gonna do great for that one fire. You do that too. You do that 3 times. You actually created a little bit of coating of creosote on the inside, and now you get that stove up to temperature 400 or 500 degrees. Well, all you did is just now have an ignition source in your chimney.
Wow.
So it's important that even on wood stoves, and we tell you, get a thermometer, know what you're burning. And when they ask us, it's not heating my house, the first question I ask, what are we burning? What temperatures are you burning this? Well, it's hot. It's burning hot. Well, what's hot? What is hot to you? Well, it's hot. I can't touch it. Well, what's the thermostat say? I don't have one. Right? Well, it's very important to have one because if you can't gauge temperature, you can't gauge efficiency on a wood stove. So the hotter you burn it, the cleaner, the more efficient, the better it burns.
Wow.
You can't take a wood stove and just take it for a walk in a park like a pellet stove, right? A pellet stove, I can kick that down on low. I can have that thing burning on the lowest setting, 5,000 BTUs an hour, right? Walk out the door. It's not creating creosote. It's not creating anything but fine ash, and very low BTUs is still taking that chill out of the room, right? I can't do that on a wood stove. I have to have that thing 400 degrees, spend an hour and a half. And again, I'm not taking away from it because I love my wood stove. I love when that thing gets going. There's no stopping it. You got to feed it. You got to keep it going. But again, what my lifestyle, if I don't keep it going, that's where my gas stove comes into play.
Right.
You know, because then I can come home, immediately flip the switch, know that in 10 minutes I'm going to have heat. The blower's going to turn on. I'm going to be comfortable. I can keep doing what I was ready to do at home. Relax.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize the efficiency, and then there's with the wood stoves getting it up to that temperature, and there's probably another factor is the wood, right? Too.
Oh, huge. Well, we've gotten a lot of folks who come in, they shop us for wood stoves, and they get the wood stove installed, and we ask them, well, where are we getting the wood? And they're like, oh, right there in my backyard.
Yeah.
I just chopped that down the other day. It's ready to go. And
They're on the side of the highway picking stuff
yeah,
up.
exactly. So and it's garbage,
Right.
things like that, newspaper. But it's very important to it, and what you put into it is what you're going to get in return.
Right.
And even with pellet stoves, a lot of people don't think that. They go to, I don't want to say any little box stores, and they just grab a bag of pellets, and they're like, I got my pellets. Well, you don't know really what you got. You got a bunch of bark. That's what you got. And it's producing flame, but it's not producing efficient heat. It's not producing clean, efficient heat for you. It's just burning flame.
Right.
That's going to do it. So again, yes, wood stoves is important. Make sure you have seasoned wood. And when I say seasoned wood, it's not buying it like today because you got the wood stove installed today. Is making sure, if you are thinking about a wood stove, you plan ahead and start buying wood now for next year's service, because that's when it's going to be good. It's not going to be good in the next week and a half just because it sat there in your driveway.
And
So
what would your recommendation be for the best wood to throw in your? Or is there's a couple different ones, or?
Well, hardwood is going to be your best wood.
Yeah.
Hardwood, dry wood, having it, when I say moisture level, 20% to 25% moisture level content is going to be prime, because that's going to give you roughly about 6,000 BTUs per pound. So when you're holding a log of wood and you're like, wow, this thing weighs 10 pounds, we'll just know that most of that, unless it's all water, right? Yeah. So in return, that's why you got to let it sit. That's why when you stack your wood, it's important on how you stack your wood. It's important on how you cover your wood. You can't just take a tarp and toss it over and expect it not to breathe. And now this thing is just swamp wood because it's just absorbed all the moisture versus letting it emit it. So there's a lot of things to just a wood stove that a lot of people that are like, really? I'm like, yeah, you got to look at it.
Yeah. So wood, you definitely need a thermometer. Make sure you're burning at a certain temperature. make sure you're, a moisture meter for your wood.
Absolutely.
Maybe you don't pick it off of the side of the
Yeah, stay
highway.
off of Route 8.
Stay
Yeah.
off of Route 8. And then if you do, you're gonna have to leave it for a year. Let it dry out as
Yeah.
long as it's
And
hardwood.
just do some I mean, if you are buying a wood stove, look at a couple landscape companies around you. A lot of them are already doing work. I mean, you see some of the yards and there's acres of wood that's sitting there. Well, that's somebody that's in business.
Yeah.
Somebody who just started a landscape company who just cleared out a lot. I wouldn't go buying wood for them right now, especially trying to burn it this year. I will look for something that's definitely seasoned. Get that moisture meter, stick it in the back of the wood, or even take the wood and crack it together. Because if it sounds like two lightning bolts, most of the times it's dry wood versus
you
two
go.
thuds. Then you know it's
That's
heavy.
a good one. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So there's a
Love
few
it.
things you can look at besides looking at the cracks and the, again, the old folks' tales of look at the crack in the wood and
Yeah.
look at over here, and if it's got moss on it, no.
Yeah.
So there's some things that you can do to
It is
avoid it.
true. Back in the day, they didn't have moisture meters.
No, they did. Yeah, no, they
had to
didn't.
figure it out.
Yep. So they looked at the butt of the wood and they said, "All right,
Yeah.
does that look seasoned?" And they even smelled it.
Yeah.
It smells fresh.
Yeah.
I could tell you right there how many times I walked into a client's driveway and they're like, the stove's not heating up, and I'm like, I always go there with my own wood. By the way, I don't bring or use their wood. I bring my own wood because I know it's seasoned.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, smells like a couple trees down in here, and they're like, yeah, it's the pile of wood right over there that's nicely still stacked in a teepee pile, and they haven't really restacked it, covered it, or did anything to make sure that it stays good wood for a while.
I think if you have a wood stove, it's kind of a labor of love. You
It
have to
is.
just enjoy it.
You have to.
because it's not. It's
Yeah.
probably not the best efficiency of your time to get. To get
It's not.
heat.
But you know what? On a Saturday evening, and you're sitting there, and it just with the fire going, rip roaring,
It's
the
nice.
house is just warm.
Yeah.
The walls are warm.
Yeah.
The stairs are warm. I mean, don't get me wrong. As much as I love my gas stove, it's heating up ambient temperature.
Right.
So as soon as I turn off my gas stove, in a couple minutes, I can see my temperature start dropping. But with a wood stove, man, that thing starts dropping. I can know that my house is going to stay warm for the next 10 hours, 12 hours before I start seeing a drop in temp.
Especially being in Connecticut, it's nice to have that warmth. But so Nick, that was quick. I mean, there were some really good nuggets there of information.
Yeah.
I think the listeners are gonna love. Anything else you want to tell everybody about the industry that people don't realize, or any kind of other additional information you want to throw out there before we close it up?
Outside of, again, folks like you who are project managers and builders are up and coming and doing great. I mean, I follow you on LinkedIn. I see a lot of your work. I mean, congratulations to the new construction and your remodels. My opinion is just get involved with associations, get involved with your local chapters, get involved with committees, get involved with people who are going to promote you and tap you on your back and say, hey, you know what? That was great. You know what? I'm going to make sure that I refer you because, again, having that background is better than spending thousands of dollars on advertising that you don't even know who your audience is really picking up right now and looking at it. So spend that time as a builder, as project manager, no matter what your business is, join an association, get with the link on that part because it's been very helpful for us on our part.
Hey, any organizations? What are you? Anyone you want to shout out, or is?
Yeah, I mean, the Home Builders Remodeler Association of Connecticut is probably one of our largest aspects of where we spend our time and just promoting that because, again, they spend a lot of time with the Capitol, making sure that with the COVID that we didn't shut down. I mean, there were so many things that they stood up for as for a small business owner that we made sure that we stood busy, so that was important for us. These home shows that we just had the other day, that was amazing. I did quite a bit of hot tub saunas out of there, so it was wonderful. Thank you very much, Sheila and Eric.
Yeah.
But again, in return, it's the effort. So you can't just go there and expect it. You got to go there. You got to put the time. You have to spend the effort into it. It is a lot of grind. It is a lot of nighttime stuff. And, I thank my wife for all the time she just says, go, just go, fine, bring me some good stories back, but in that case, that's where my involvement and how I grow my business, mind you, when I say in the beginning, I tried so hard by myself, right? Tried so hard to do it by myself. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. What am I doing? And then I just started talking to more people, started going to more places. And again, when I say got my real estate license to go to these associations, to start talking to people and figure out what they're working with, what their challenges are,
Mhm.
what the next thing is and coming up, right? Because if you're not going to these things, or should I say, ear to the ground, what do you know? You're always in the mosh pit, right?
Yeah.
I like to pull my head up a little bit, and that's what kind of, when I say being in association and being on that, it kind of picks you up a little bit, and you can kind of see above the crowd and go, okay, now I know which way I'm going.
Yeah.
Let me at least do that.
I love that. I mean, the HBRA, our general manager Tony Lamberto, give him a shout out. He's the chair for the remodeling committee
That's
over there,
amazing. That's
and so
amazing.
Eric does a great job over there.
Yep.
And I just, to kind of close it up, I love how you tied that in at the end there about elevating yourself with the people around you, and then also prior to that, you were kind of talking about making sure you're aligning yourself with the clients that want to do the right thing,
Absolutely.
and that includes you networking with that group of people that have those clients.
Yep.
And I did a whole thing on fire some of your clients because they take a lot of your time.
Absolutely.
And so
People call me crazy, but you know
Yeah.
what? You have to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
You have to do
Yeah.
it.
So and the goal is never get those clients, elevate
No.
yourself,
Yep.
get in that energy of doing the right thing and enjoying being in that group of people that are like, wow, we're doing good stoves.
And
It's
I
lovely.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
And they appreciate
Yeah.
everything that you bring to the table. And it's not a dollar value, it's a
Right.
relationship value, a partnered value. And that's where I say this: if we don't align with what we're trying to bring to the table, and know that all the work that we've done, like I said, we just discussed this. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg of the efforts that we put into making sure that your gas fireplace, it may work for you for the next 5 years. Because mind you, you're going to sell your home. This isn't
Right.
your forever fireplace, right? But for this home, it's forever fireplace. So those are things that we take very deeply, and we take to heart when we're doing our position and job.
I love it. Let's leave it at that. That was
Yes,
awesome.
sir.